Hi, my name is Zia, and I'll be presenting to you 60 years of American women's fashion, starting from 1920. Alright, so to start us off, the 1920s were in fact a time of peace. Following the end of World War I, we entered the Roaring Twenties. This was a time of economic prosperity and social growth. Women gained the right to vote after decades of struggle. The 20s were known as the Jazz Age, and a new phenomenon known as flappers emerged. Initially used as a derogatory term, flappers were women who deviated from the conservative norm of 1910s and dressed with short dresses, short hair, and lots of jewelry. As you can see in the drawing, the dresses tended to favor boxy, boyish figures. Also in the drawing, you can see cloche hats. These were commonly in style. It was generally expected for women to wear hats wherever they went. This trend would continue for several decades onward. At this point in time, makeup favored long top and bottom lashes, heavily powdered eyes, very thinly plucked eyebrows, and a red lip. Now, moving on to the 1930s, the US entered the Great Depression. Expensive fabrics like silk and linen were difficult to get a hold of, so women turned to flour sack dresses, which were made out of cotton sacks that flour would come in as fabric. Pants for women were becoming increasingly normalized by big-name magazines such as Vogue, who would print discussions over whether pants are and aren't appropriate in certain situations for women to wear. A feminine figure was favored in this decade, and dresses tended to be molded to a woman's body, in contrast to Le Garçon of the 1920s, clothes creating an illusion of a boyish figure. Dresses went back to sweeping the floor line, but the backless dress was also popularized, especially for evening wear. Alright, so moving on. By the 1940s, the US would enter World War II following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. While husbands were at war, it was expected of women to enter work in factories to fill gaps where their husbands and bachelors left empty. The iconic image of Rosie the Riveter was created by artist Norman Rockwell in an effort with the US government to encourage women to go to work. In wartime, luxury materials were still scarce, so cotton would become the most popular material to wear. It was still expected to wear hats out, for men and women alike, but the same scarcity of material made the turban a fashionable choice for its low cost of resources and comfort in factories. The 1940s notably also marked a beginning of the civil rights movement. World War II consisted of racially blended troops out on the field. The notorious Japanese internment camps were created during World War II out of fear of Japanese spies living in the US. The National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, although pre-existing at that point in time, was emboldened by the conditions of such internment camps and the black servicemen of the war. Moving on, the 1950s marked a second version of the Roaring Twenties. Following World War II, there was another economic boom. The 50s were known to be the birth of rock and roll. Artists like Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, and Chuck Berry were all popular. Similarly to the 1930s, the 1950s favored a womanly figure with knit-in waists. Famously, the poodle skirt featured a wide skirt for this very reason, in contrast to the leg-hugging skirts of the past. Notably, haircuts like the pin-up, side part, and poodle do were in style at this point in time. The infamous Supreme Court case, Brown v. Board of Education, was also decided in this decade. The case ruled that separating children in schools was unconstitutional. The ruling made it possible to slowly introduce racially integrated living into America. The 60s were a very important decade for social change in American history. It was then that the civil rights movement finally gained enough momentum to pay off, with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or nationality. At this point in time, fashion could be seen to become progressively more casual. Colorful clothes were worn by men and women alike. The idea that people should constantly wear hats disappeared around this era. The hippie subculture was also born in this era. It criticized the abundant consumerism of the 1950s. The subculture rejected aspects of mainstream American life. The fashion aspect of the subculture favored individualism and sported loose, flowy clothes like bell-bottom pants. Hippie clothes typically used floral and colorful patterns. Okay, final decade. The hippie subculture would progress into the 1970s as well. Colorful, flowery patterns would become icons of peace, along with the peace signs you're most likely familiar with today. The hippie movement supported peace, free love, and was anti-war. Also, drugs, but I'm not supposed to talk about that in school. Alright, many fashion subcultures were born in this time period. American icon David Bowie was known for his glitter rock and often sported colorful, eccentric clothes. Disco music and punk music both rose in popularity. The disco movement encouraged artistic expression and served as a form of rebellion among young people against mainstream culture. The punk movement served a similar purpose, focused more on being anti-corporate and anti-conformist. The 80s to 2024 are obviously equally important to the cultural history of America as the decades discussed, but that's something we can talk about another day. I think you'll find that the cultural influences of 1920, specifically 1960 and 1970, are everlasting to this day. For now, this is all I have to show to you, so thank you for watching, and think of the past next time you choose your next outfit.